Hey guys, welcome back to Views from the 702, rated 5 stars on iTunes by Very Spicy Indeed. And they said 10 out of 10. Very nice with all that spice, but not too much spice. Too much spice would be strange. Also a little bit salty, but I think that's just Cole. Speaking of Cole, I'm joined here by my co-host, Cole Gerard,
I thought I was perfectly salted, I'll have you know.
and
Oh my God.
Waylon Kiefer.
Staying up late to bring you this podcast. Thank you
Alright,
Okay.
let's get into it, boys.
very much. Okay, so in today's episode, we will be talking about the effects of media and how it desensitizes us to certain aspects of the world.
Now, Waylon, speaking of desensitization, we have a word from our sponsor cocaine. Have you ever procrastinated a certain 3 to 4 page critical response paper until the day before, or even the day of its due date? Well, do we have a solution for you? With cocaine, you can keep your mind sharp and focused, allowing you to procrastinate until your heart's content. Not only will cocaine keep you focused, it keeps you energized, allowing you to stay up to ungodly hours. Working on that paper you are just praying will get a passing grade. Little disclaimer, do not use cocaine, it is a Schedule II drug and you can die. Cocaine is bad for you, do not use it. I repeat, this ad was for monetary gain. Do not use cocaine.
Alright, thank you. Thank you once again
Yeah,
to our sponsors, Cocaine. Really appreciate it. We're kind of making the bread over here.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's any
we
FBI
have to
agents
thank them for
listening,
that.
we,
Only
we
our
don't
seventh
we don't
episode.
use cocaine. All right. And so yeah, this is our seventh episode. As Cole said before, it's been a week from the pilot, and already we're getting sponsors left and right.
Fairly big
But
name ones too,
Yeah,
at that.
oh, I
cocaine.
know. Any FBI agents listening? Once again, this is we do not use cocaine. This is all for money. But anyway, guys, all right. So today's topic was like media desensitizing us, and I kind of wanted to talk about this because, well, I know recently me and Cole had just seen Joker, and there's been a lot of talk around Joker, and with the release of Modern Warfare Remastered, there's also been a lot of talk of the infamous little airport mission, No Russian, and like, I know I played that when I was younger too, and was definitely exposed to that younger. But did any of you guys ever kind of play it, get a feel for that? Do any of you guys know what I'm even talking about?
I played Modern Warfare, but I don't know what you're talking about.
I
All
never
right,
played Modern Warfare 2. However, I still am familiar with the mission that you are talking about because it was so
Yeah,
controversial.
all
indeed.
right. Okay, so I guess since I actually played it, I can talk about this for a second. So the infamous Modern Warfare 2 mission, it was called No Russian, and your character quite literally had to walk into a public airport in Moscow, Russia, and just start kind of, for lack of a better word, murdering the characters in the game in cold blood. And your character was an undercover FBI agent, kind of inside this Russian cult that he's been gathering. And at the very end, your character is sought out by the Russian, and your character is killed. And it kind of brings up that question of, you
Heartbreaking.
know, well, not only heartbreaking, but it's like I played that when I was like 12. I didn't
I
think
would, if
anything of
I was
it.
a parent, I would not want my kids playing that game. Oh my gosh.
I
Well, I mean,
agree.
yeah, because it's just, yeah, it was pretty brutal. What was that, Cole?
I agree with Waylon that if I were a parent, I wouldn't want, especially with today's world,
Yeah, just
the
saying if
amount of mass violence that is going on. I do not
in
think that would have
quotation,
been. I don't think it was acceptable in 2012, but I think they would definitely not pass today in 2019. That is for sure.
quotations,
Yeah,
not a parent.
and so like I think because I'm bringing this up because I do remember. I don't exactly remember where it came from, but that was brought back to light, like somewhere on mainstream news. I even had my parents question me about it because they never really recognized I was in the game, and I think it's pretty common nowadays to say video games cause violence or other forms of media cause violence. And I think it doesn't necessarily cause violence. Maybe in the most mentally or ill prepared it would, but I think it more just desensitizes us to said violence. Doesn't exactly incite us to want to go out and actively commit violence, but it's more like we see something, like we'll see violence, and then we'll see it again elsewhere, and we're just like, oh, that's crazy. And
It
I don't
makes
know. What are your guys' thoughts?
it definitely makes us less sympathetic towards others. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
From this
Yeah.
exposure.
Well,
Yeah,
recently I
and
was reading a CNN Health article about this exact issue. The title of it is "Do Video Games Lead to Violence?" And in this article, it essentially talks about how it does lead to violence. Right here it says that research demonstrates a link between violent video game use and increases in aggressive behavior, decreases in pro-social behavior, empathy, and moral engagement. So I think that this research that they're getting is, I'm not exactly sure how it's conducted. It doesn't even give you a route to see how it was conducted, but I think it's possible that they were linking correlation with causation, which, if any of us have a stats class, we know that's not how that works. But it's the point of the CNN article was stating that playing video games causes children to go out and be violent, which I don't think that is the case. I think that it allows us to see violence in movies and other things and just not think anything of it until something big comes out, you know. That really changes how we see it.
yeah,
I agree. I agree.
Like in
and
Joker,
oh yeah,
the
sorry.
violence,
Continue.
it's an extremely different type of violence in that movie.
But
It's
yeah,
an
so like building off of that, because I know we went from video games, which is a very, very popular form of media, and how there's obviously a lot of violence in video games. Those video games make a lot of money. But moving forward with that, if saying video games cause violence, then you have to say violent movies cause violence. Because yeah, Cole, like you brought up, there's Joker, which is a very serious, very dark movie, and there's only what, 4 acts of actual violence in the movie. Like there's 4 scenes where there's blood, but those scenes are brutal. And I remember watching it, and I don't tend like I can like I've seen John Wick and Deadpool, two also very very popular R movies, both
Hmm.
of which have lots of violence. And Deadpool was full of humor, full of satire. John Wick was uh, John Wick was just kind of all flashy, interesting to watch, but Joker was just
hmm
brutal. Like the entire theater was silent. I cringe. I don't cringe when I watch movies. I might get like, oh, I might watch Hat. I might like watch like Hachi, and I'll get sad, but I don't cringe. But Joker, like the death scenes, definitely made me cringe.
Absolutely.
And
Right here it says that in Joker, only 7 to 12 people are killed, which means that only 7 were truly shown on camera. Those 7 deaths
yeah,
affected all the viewers
Yeah.
like 10 times more than the hundreds of deaths that are in the John Wick movies.
and I remember reading an article that was published on October 18th, and the title here reads, "What does success of Joker movie with demonic anti-heroes say about us?" And it's talking about how humanity has this need, or not like more of a need, but you ever heard of like things like entropy, where everything always wants to go to chaos? It's talking about how
Mhm.
humanity has this animalistic like feature of themselves where everyone wants to revert to chaos. And that movie is all about the breakdown of cultural norms. It's about opening up the mind of like the mentally hurting. And I think that movie does exactly just that, because the people that did watch it, the people that are very that there was, as far as I know, maybe it's local, maybe it's international, but there are two kinds of people. When they leave that theater, they say two things. They go, "That movie was terrible," and they go, "That movie was really good." And
Mhm.
those that say it was really good are often they're often like, "Wow, the cinematography was amazing. It really puts you on Joker's side." And everyone else goes, "That was just a really bad movie. There was no action, or it was the scenes were really really awkward and made me feel uncomfortable." And I think that's just because it really does focus on this fictional character and the breakdown of his norms and how he's mentally unstable and how it just keeps going backwards. And it's all media, and it's all reflecting back onto the people as a whole. And it's making everyone think. That's exactly what it's doing. That's what all of this is doing. It's making us think, and it's making us react a certain way to topics like that if they're ever brought up or shown again.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, I
So your
think
thoughts?
I think that you said that the movie made a lot of people uncomfortable, which honestly, I think that the directors were trying to make you uncomfortable with that movie. There's no way that you can tell me that insane laughter and the scenes with him like without his shirt on where he's like emaciated and hunched over is not an attempt to make you feel uncomfortable and make you feel bad for this character. You know?
Yeah, that scene specifically had a lot of people coming out. And Waylon, what is it from a third perspective where you haven't seen Joker at all, but you've heard about it? What do you hear about that movie in general?
I've just heard it's a mind twister. I heard it's a emotion roller coaster. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These deaths, they really made you develop the character, and just taking them away was just a real shock to people.
Hmm.
Yeah, and the people in the movie that were deaths caused by Joker, they were people that had specifically wronged Joker. Whereas in Deadpool, it's mindless killing. John Wick, it's
Hmm.
not so much mindless, but it's still very flashy. And then going back to video games, it's the same thing. You're just more pulling the virtual trigger on a bunch of NPCs. And
Yeah.
I think that just like I do want to say, at least how I feel, it does desensitize us because, like I said, I can like when I first started watching movies that had any kind of violence, I'd cringe. I'd be like, "Ooh, that's a little much." But now I can watch John Wick, not even blink an eye,
Hmm.
and I think it's the same now. Since we did talk about video games, movies, it would be smart to bring up music because music plays a huge role in both of those forms of media, but even just listening. I think music has desensitized us to substance abuse and the use of it. And obviously, there
Okay.
are some artists that have been like killed because of drug overdoses. And people look at that and they're like, oh, that's so sad. But then it's not really
And
talked about after that.
yeah, it
Yeah, I have
just
something to relay
disappears.
off of Xavier. So I do agree with the music desensitizing us, as actually there are some rappers that do take drugs, and they say if like they go off the drug, like they're not going to be the same person than they were with the drug. So they feel like the drug is something that's necessary for their persona that people see.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't listen to new music. I listen to classic rock, so I'm not 100% familiar with this. I know there is some songs that deal with violence, but definitely not as much. But
I th-
the I know I've heard some rap songs. When I'm with my friends in their car, they'll play rap because that's what they listen to. And the stuff that I hear in those songs, honestly, it shocks me because I don't listen to that type of music, so I'm not, in a sense desensitized to like hearing that type of stuff. So, like when I'm in the car with my friends, I'll hear this stuff and I'm like, wow, I can't believe that they're just throwing that out there. Essentially, a lot of this could probably be used as a confession tape in a lot of
Oh yeah,
trials.
and it was in
Uh-huh.
the but who was it? I forget his name. Ah,
Is it the Murder on My Mind singer?
yes, I
Yes,
forget. I don't know his
YMW
name.
Melly. His name. I know that
YMW
one.
Melly. There was a song where he that was used as evidence against him, and I
Mhm.
think this all falls back to the whole us getting desensitized. I think all of humanity getting desensitized because if you think about it, back in the day, especially 50s and 60s, like the threat of the Cold War was very very evident, and they didn't really like joke about all that stuff. They didn't joke about any kind of
Mm-mm.
violence, any kind of guns, drugs, and that's because back in the day it definitely existed. Like the opioid crisis was a thing, but it wasn't really brought up. And as the years went on, more people started to use it. More people started to create songs. More people saw violent video games as interesting and fun. Like Doom was coming out at that time, which was what, like late 80s, early 90s.
Mhm.
All of that was gaining traction, and the more people played, the more they were like, "Well, this isn't really that bad," and the more money it made, and it just kind of created that little domino effect, to where we are today. So with very, very graphic, violent video games, which even I'll admit they can be pretty fun. These very graphic, violent movies like John Wick, Deadpool, when done correctly, really entertaining, or when done in a different method like Joker, it's really, really like it makes you uncomfortable, but it also makes you think. And then finally, to the music. But I think the biggest part of all of this is the reason why this gets exposed and brought to light so much is because of major media outlets like Fox News, CNN, CW, and even any kind of like local news network. Because anything that can get clicks, they'll do.
yeah, I agree.
Um,
Mhm.
So like if it can get clicks, they'll do it. Even if it means clickbaiting people, making the title super super like exaggerated. Like
Correct.
Joker, huge huge controversy because what was it? Aurora, Colorado? Was that the name of the where the original Batman movie was? And
Sure.
I think they had I think don't quote me on that. but that movie refused to show Joker because of what had happened. Heck, was it half a decade ago, maybe a little longer?
Mm-hmm.
And so they refused to show that because the media started blowing up Joker, talking about how the movie's about a psychopath. It's going to create a new breed of psychopaths.
Yeah, and how
And
it was gonna incite violence. I saw a lot about that.
yeah.
I agree.
And after watching the movie, I definitely understood why the media was saying that, but I had never seen anything about people going out and rioting on the streets. I think the movie just all made us a little more desensitized to just brutal, upfront, people literally going insane.
That also has to bring up the question that we all have in our minds. It is does violence in movies, games, and or music actually provoke violence in people, or just desensitize us? What do you guys think about that? I don't think it affects us. It makes us violent. I think it just desensitizes us.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone personally, I believe that anyone that sees a movie and says, "Oh, I'm gonna lash out because I saw this in a movie, so that means it's okay." That person is mentally ill and is mentally unstable.
I
There
feel like
no
it's
one
just an
sees
excuse.
something, absolutely, it's a scapegoat, it's an excuse. Anyone like, yeah, you can say, "Oh, well, I saw in GTA, I stole a police car and was driving around," but no one who plays GTA in their right mind is gonna go out and steal a police car and just start driving it around. That's
I'm
not
glad that
something
you
that people
said
do.
in your right mind too, because
Yeah.
I think it really does come down to that. Because well, let's say like back in the days of DS, no one ever played Cooking Mama and go, oh, like especially like when you were younger, oh, I'm gonna go do this. No one played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, saw a really really cool trick, and attempted to do it, knowing they were gonna break their neck.
Mm-hmm.
Except back in the day, we all knew you were gonna break your neck. Nowadays, it's just, oh, I just kind of saw a guy get shot. I know what happens if you get shot, but now you see it and you're like, oh well, it's fake, it's virtual. Just because it's
Mm-hmm.
virtual doesn't mean that we still don't understand what's going on. I think we can all kind of vouch for each other when we say we know that there's violence in the world. We know what goes on, and I think a lot of people just don't get that. I think it does fall back to just us getting desensitized, being able to continue to play these games, and each and every time. All right, here's a bad example, but this is a really bad example, but it's kind of a really good outline of this. It's the whole like chasing the high. I'm making air quotes. You guys can't see it, but it's like the chasing the high. Where the first time you ever like take a hit, it's like
Hmm.
up there, like wow, that's crazy. But each and
Mm.
every time after that, it affects you a little less. And I think that's exactly what all of media does. It's every time you see something, it affects you just a little bit less until you see it, and you're like, wow, well, that's just how today is. I don't really have much else. Do you guys have anything you want to add, talk about?
No, not really. I
No,
think
I think we covered the topic pretty well.
All right. And so, I mean, obviously, we did try to mention any outside sources. I had an article from Fox News pulled up. I know my co-host Cole had an article from CNN. And yeah, I think that just about sums up our short little podcast for you guys today. And I think that it really is all the time we have for tonight. And so this has been Views from the 702 with Xavier, Waylon, and Cole. And remember, our ads are satirical, our conclusions are lyrical, and the earth is most definitely spherical. Have a good night.
bye.
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 Bye.